For our safety, our community, to help prevent the spread of the coronavirus, our governing board is closed to the public. We're sitting apart and we'll be wearing masks when we aren't speaking. Our study session will be streamed live. The public can view the study session anytime on YouTube channel. Also tonight, I'm going to suggest that if we can't talk about anything that's not on our agenda for open meeting laws, and if we do decide, we do go slightly off topic, I'm going to intervene and say that we can ask that, you can email Dr. Mendeville on that question, okay? So I call this study session to order. The time is now 5:01. Let the record show that we have 5 board members present. The study session will update the board and the community on social emotional awareness. And we will start off with Dr. Mendeville. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, executive team members, and those individuals out who are viewing and listening to our special study session on social and emotional wellness for both our students and our staff. I just want to, before I introduce Mr. McDonald, I want to just give a brief frame of why we're doing this special study session, and that is to update our community members and our families on the work that we do behind the scenes that oftentimes are known, quite frankly. And so it's actually a good time for us to bring forward the information and the resources, through not just monetary resources, but the different agency partnerships that we have with Tempe-Union to help address social emotional wellness and the needs of our students and staff. And so it's a big topic, but one that I think we could frame in an organized manner and a thoughtful manner, just to share what we have been doing up to this point. And without any further information from me, I'm going to introduce that to the next part to Mr. McDonald, and he can introduce our special guests. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Dr. Mendeville. Madam President, governing board members, it's our pleasure to be here. And of course, we could not do that with an amazing team. So I wanted to introduce our team today. Dr. Lisa Marin, she's the coordinator of social emotional wellness. Eric Lauer is the social emotional liaison. And of course, we also have Maria Gonzalez here, Care 7 social services coordinator. So at this time, we would like to do a brief study session on social emotional wellness. Dr. Marin?
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Mendeville, executive team, community members, and staff. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to share more in this important area. As you know, this has always been a very important area, and it's even more so right now. There's a lot of concern about the social emotional needs in our community because of COVID, the increased needs. So we want to share with you a lot of information tonight. I want to emphasize that what we're sharing mostly are the efforts of the district office team to support and supplement social emotional wellness efforts in the district. But I also want to underline the incredible work of teachers, staff, administrators at all of our sites who are doing so much every day for the social emotional wellness of our students and our community. So I want to thank them first and foremost. Right, next slide. There we go. Many of you are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of need. This is a playful graphic to illustrate that hierarchy of need. Imagine, if you will, that the top part of the triangle is excellent teaching and learning, which is what we're all after here at Tempe-Union. There is a platform that we need to build on to get to that excellent teaching and learning. And that platform means that students have to feel safe, respected, and connected, and healthy in order to learn. And teachers have to feel safe, respected, and connected in order to teach well. So we understand this, and our strategic plan really illustrates how we understand this in our underpinning. So not only do we care about the food and the shelter and the sleep of our community, but we also care about the emotional well-being of everyone so that they can be present and attentive and comfortable and safe to learn. Tonight, we're going to be covering several different areas. I just wanted to give you a preview. We're going to talk about how we are supporting staff, social emotional wellness, both in terms of their own needs as people and also what they need to support our students. We're going to be talking about how we support our families. We're going to be talking about how all of these things support our students. And we're going to be highlighting some wonderful community partners. We couldn't do this without them. Also, we're going to be featuring one of those community partners tonight, which is Care 7. And Maria Gonzalez has been incredible to work with, and she'll be coming up right after me to talk more about the youth specialists that you've supported so generously and their expanded services. After we're done with all of this, we're going to ask if you have any questions, and we hope to leave plenty of time for that. So first of all, we want to talk about supporting staff wellness. And I want to let you know that last year and also the school year before that, we did a very detailed needs assessment as part of the strategic goal planning. We asked students and parents and staff members what their needs were in the areas of social emotional wellness and what they thought we were already doing well. We asked staff particularly not only what did they think our students need, but what did they need? And what we heard loud and clear is that, you know, teachers and other staff members, of course, are people too, and they also have stresses and sadnesses and anxieties and fears and needs that can sometimes require support. So they made it clear, and we heard them, that they want to know what resources we have that we can provide, and where they can also go in the community in order to get those supports. So I'll be illustrating some of those things today. They also shared a lot of great information about what they think students need, and so did students and families. And really the major summary of that data is that there's a lot of anxiety or fear, there's a lot of sadness and depression, and those things have definitely been exacerbated by the pandemic, which should be no surprise to any of us. We hope to move through this. We know we'll move through this, but we need to be attentive to those kinds of needs. So what have we done to support staff wellness? We have to start here before we think about how staff can support our students well, because we've heard that analogy. You have to secure your own oxygen mask first, right, before you're able to provide good services to other people. So we've sent out monthly emails for all last year and for the first several months of this year as well. And in those monthly emails, we tried to do two things for staff: address various areas of self-care, how they can support themselves and their families, and then also another layer about how they can support their students. We think it's really important to speak to both of those levels. And every month we also remind them about the resources we offer, and also that they're always welcome to go through their own insurance provider to see what other resources are there. So specifically at the bottom of every monthly email, we remind them about the employee assistance program we have through our insurance, how to access that, because you might hear that once, but you might not really remember it until you need it. So we'd rather be redundant with that information and make sure they know where to look for it every month, and we've displayed it in other areas as well. And of course, it's part of our employee orientation. We also have made all staff aware that there is something called COVID care right now through the City of Tempe. And this is an extraordinary thing that the City of Tempe and Care 7 are providing. What it is 3 free sessions that are very solution-focused and really target a lot of the common concerns around COVID. Financial hardship, anxiety, the kinds of things that we've all had to varying degrees because of the pandemic. Not only is COVID care available to anybody who attends one of our schools, lives in the City of Tempe, but it's also available to all staff members regardless of where they live. So this is really important. And Ms. Gonzalez may be able to answer more questions about that later, but we're really grateful once again for that partnership. We've also given a lot of professional development in the past, and will continue doing so, focused on self-care for staff, including mindfulness, and we're looking forward to offering more mindfulness classes later this year, and also various kinds of self-care for staff. Other PD as well, but these are the PDs that are more focused on staff helping themselves. We also offer mindfulness for staff at some of our campuses. In fact, Mr. Lauer, who was introduced earlier, does regular mindfulness for the staff at Mountain Point, which we're really grateful for and we hear great feedback about. And we hope to expand this to all of our campuses this year as a continuation of our mindfulness mission. We also have a district website, and I'm not sure if all of you have had a chance to peruse the social emotional supports that we have on our district website, but I wanted to take a moment to review this with you. And this isn't just about supporting staff wellness, but some other areas as well. I thought it was a good time to show you a few screenshots. I know this is too small to read right now, but when you go to the main district webpage, if you click on social emotional wellness, this is the main webpage. And what's important to know about the content here is that not only is it full of resources and suggestions about different places you can go in the community and ideas for how to get those resources, both if you're in crisis mode, but also if you have long-term needs. But it's also got a lot of educational material, a different layer of educational material for staff. I'll show you in a minute if they sign in that's more targeted to how teachers can help students. But this is intended to be the interface with the public so that you can see there's a statement for students and a statement for parents, and it's an invitation to explore and even link to other really comprehensive sites. You can't see all of the site, all of the areas that we offer information on, but they're all listed on the left-hand side of the page. And so are a bunch of wonderful videos that our staff members have made as part of the mindfulness mission and as part of the high school health and wellness program that we had for the last 3 years. So there are videos about mindfulness and yoga and meditation that are made by some of our most wonderful staff that are there for viewing. This is just a screenshot of the COVID-19 social emotional wellness page, which is like a sub-page. So we established this because we knew there were a lot of unique needs because of COVID, and we wanted to make sure to push out those resources that were unique to this time around social emotional wellness. So you can see those, and you can see again there's a summary of the COVID care that I mentioned and a link to get to that. There's also, if you scroll down this page, which I can't do for you here, there are a number of other links to information and articles from very reputable sources about how to care for yourself during COVID, how to care for your children, some facts and some important guidance. And while we try not to update this so constantly that it's always changing, we work hard to keep it updated. And of course, I couldn't do that without Megan Sterling and her incredible staff, Nellie Mullins and Warren Cole, and Kelly Gardner, so we're really grateful for working with them. This is a quick snapshot. I won't belabor this too much longer, but I just want you to know what this looks like. If a staff member logs in, there's another whole submenu of items, most of which you can see here, that is specifically targeted towards staff, both for COVID-specific information and also for other general categories that they might need themselves. And this might be self-care information for educators, and it's also information educating educators on how to help their students. That was another thing we heard loud and clear in the needs assessment, that educators love their students and they want as much information as they can about how to care for them well. So this is just one way that we've tried to provide that. Finally, this is a sneak preview of something that we're going to be calling our virtual wellness room, not a calming room, but this is a screenshot of another similar page. A number of great agencies have created these virtual calming rooms and have allowed us to steal their ideas. Most of the links that are on these pages are part of the public domain, but as you can see, it's a very warm and welcoming interface, and it allows people to go to different sites where they might be able to watch live streams of penguins or bears fishing or breathing exercises or other kinds of visual relaxation and music, various kinds of apps they might want to use. And we're also going to be linking some of our own internal resources here, so it's easy to find those mindfulness, meditation, yoga videos by going to the calming room. So this is something, that I wanted to give you a sneak peek of that I'm so thrilled we're developing for our district as well, because it'll be an extra resource. And you can tell I'm a very wordy person, but when you're stressed out, you don't need a lot of words. And so it's really nice to have this calmer, sort of picture-oriented interface to just sort of relax for a minute instead of, you don't necessarily want to read a 3-page article every time you need some help. So I try to be respectful of all types, right? All right. Back to our regularly scheduled PowerPoint here. I'm back to helping staff. Now we're going to switch to helping staff to support student social emotional wellness, right? We've already talked about how we're helping staff to help themselves. I want to take just another minute to say we are aware of how much stress our staff is under, and I'm so grateful for all that they're doing and all the ways that they've had to switch gears and try different forms of teaching and now multiple times of teaching and all of the preparation that goes into that. So I don't mean to sound like rosy that all of this is sufficient, but we are trying to help our staff in different ways, and we're open to hearing other ideas for how we might support them. Just want to really put a shout out to the teachers and all of our staff in particular for being so flexible and hardworking during these very unusual times. So how are we supporting staff to support students? We are doing suicide prevention training. And you know, because you're our governing board and community, that this isn't new for us. We have been working with Teen Lifeline and some other community agencies to do suicide prevention training for several years. But what is new and important is that we now have the Mitch Warnock Act, which requires a certain kind of training to be happening for all staff starting this year. There are 8 state-approved courses right now to meet this requirement. And because of financial considerations and also because of COVID, our top choice this year was a course called Act on Facts. It also respects staff time because they're so busy. It was one of the shorter ones that was available, and it allows you to complete it in multiple sessions if needed. And as I think you're all aware, because we talked about it a little bit earlier this year, this was rolled out with our staff already, and almost all of our staff have taken it. They've submitted their certificates so we could meet this requirement. So we're happy about that. We're also really excited, as you know, that we got the safety grant, the STOP grant that you heard about at the last governing board meeting. And this is going to fund Safe Talk and Assist trainings, which are through a company called LivingWorks. Safe Talk and Assist trainings are not possible to do online, so the timing is good in that we couldn't have rolled them out this year anyway under these circumstances. But Safe Talk is somewhat similar to Act on Facts in that it's for everybody, and it can be for a broad audience, and it really helps to identify warning signs, and it's taught in person in smaller groups so that there can be questions and conversation, which of course is an optimal way to teach and learn. And then the assist trainings go along with that. It's part of the same continuum, but that's a training that is much more intensive and lengthy and is intended to be given to the people who are receiving the students in need. So our goal is to train all of what we're calling our student support personnel, and I'll talk about that list in a minute. But so that we can further increase our support staff's confidence and competence with how to receive students and work well with them when they're in need. It's a really wonderful training. We get great feedback from other folks on it, and we're also going to be developing our own trainers in these areas so that these would be sustainable trainings moving forward. So once again, a big shout out to Diane Welling, because that's a huge thing that we have funded. Before I move on to the other items on this slide, I want to say that suicide prevention, we often think of it as the kinds of trainings that I just described, but suicide prevention is much broader than just looking at the warning signs of suicide. That's incredibly important, but suicide prevention also includes prevention and having healthy communities and identifying students much sooner and keeping them feeling safe and comfortable. And so starting earlier in the chain, if you will, training staff on that, creating welcoming environments, making sure everybody feels seen and heard. And suicide prevention is also about postvention. So if, God forbid, there is a crisis that happens on our campuses, what are we doing for the people who've experienced that so that the crisis doesn't trigger other crises as well? So I want you to know we've thought a lot about this, and we do training on different ends of this continuum too, in addition to the suicide prevention training. And of course, while this also helps prevent suicide, it addresses a lot of other social emotional concerns as well. Okay, so other professional development options that we've given to staff so that they can support students are, again, around mindfulness, trauma-informed practices, restorative practices. We're looking forward to doing more of that in the future, and many other areas. And you can tell a lot of this overlaps with safety and diversity and inclusion, and those are other areas within our department. So we do a lot of cross-training and collaboration when we plan our professional development. There's also tips to support students, which I already mentioned in our social emotional wellness emails. And then I wanted to talk a bit about social emotional learning. So really a lot of what we've already talked about is social emotional learning, creating healthy, safe campuses where students feel welcome and safe, and where staff do as well. A lot of times you think about social emotional learning as curriculum or individual lessons that can be provided, and that is true, and it is possible for us to investigate and purchase something like that down the road if that's a priority for our staff, and I know it's an important area. But I really want to make sure that the community understands and that you understand that social emotional learning, like suicide prevention, is much broader than just a lesson or a curriculum, and that research shows that even if you have those lessons and curricula, unless you're really practicing what you're preaching across the board and in your community, in your culture and climate, it's not as effective. So we understand that this really has to permeate everything that we do. We have to practice what we preach. We have started doing some focused social emotional learning work with our schools. Last year, both McClintock and Desert Vista volunteered to begin this process with us, which is not to say that all schools aren't doing forms of social emotional learning, but those two schools spent a lot of hours with us really looking at the definition of social emotional learning, walking through what that looks like, the definition, looking at the data from their school, understanding what the needs are, and beginning to brainstorm what they might enhance at their already wonderful campuses. So unfortunately, that process got derailed, as many things did by the pandemic, but we're looking forward to coming back to that and also spreading that conversation in a very focused, organized way to all of our schools. Then, of course, we have, I've already talked about the website resources, so I won't repeat that here. I want you also to know about the updated individual crisis response protocols that we have for student support professionals. And here's where I'm going to define that for you. When we say student support professionals, what we're referring to right now are counselors, school psychologists, social workers, behavior interventionists, nurses, and our amazing youth specialists that you'll be hearing more about tonight. And so all of our incredible support staff all have professional training, and they all know how to respond to students in crisis. But we really wanted to take some time to do some cross-disciplinary collaboration with representatives from each of these groups and from all schools to make sure that what we were doing was consistent, and to make sure what we were doing was current and research-based, and to make sure it was really clear and documented, and that we were rolling out consistent training for everybody, so that one campus didn't do something differently than another campus, that any student could expect the same kind of response and documentation for that response wherever they went. So that was a very successful process, and we'll be rolling out those trainings later this semester. I know that there has been a question about how we document the supports that we give to students, and the expectation already is, and part of this training will continue to refine and enhance, that any time a student support professional receives a student who's been referred to them by a parent, by themselves, a student referring themselves, or by another staff member, anytime they have a significant interaction with that student and are intervening in any way, even if it just takes one quick visit to refer them somewhere else, they document that in Synergy. And that way, that helps both in terms of legal documentation to show what we've done, but it also helps tremendously as a form of internal communication with other staff members, because we work as a team and it's important to see and collaborate. Now, I should indicate that the details of any kind of interactions are documented under a very private, confidential part of Synergy, so it's not available to every staff member. But the broad strokes that a student might have been seen and is being supported are visible to other staff members too, so that they can know which counselor to talk to, or if somebody saw the school psychologist yesterday, so that they know who to collaborate with and who to follow up with. So just enhancing and increasing communication and documentation on behalf of students. And there's a lot of other areas that the individual crisis response protocols cover, checklists for how to work with students who have non-suicidal self-injury, students who are concerned might be suicidal. It links to threat assessment, which we'll be doing more training on later this year too. It talks about mandatory reporting and those sorts of things. So it's very thorough, and we're looking forward to providing more training on this and rolling this out, and also having a document that can be constantly accessed and updated so that it's all current. Okay, moving on to what we do for families, family support for social emotional wellness. What we've done in the past and what we are continuing to do are parent workshops. Last year, some of the topics that we covered in our parent workshops include the teen brain, suicide prevention, non-suicidal self-injury, and also a panel of teens sharing their high school experiences and answering parent questions to sort of explain to them what their experience was like being a high school student and kind of reminding us what it's like to be a teenager at these times. This year, we've partnered with Tempe Community Council, another one of our great community partners, and in particular, Sandy Cimino, who does P parenting classes. These are evidence-based, really wonderful curriculum of classes that focus on positive parenting techniques. And they are a curriculum, but they also allow for total flexibility with whoever comes and whatever issues that they're bringing. Sandy is a tremendously skilled facilitator, and so what she's done for us right now is she's made regular weekly classes available for parents to drop into and can design more specific, focused, targeted classes moving through the year. Right now, we just know that parents sometimes want a place to go and commiserate and pick up some strategies that people are needing during these strange times. We also are going to be expanding the services that our youth specialists are providing, because the youth specialists themselves, as Ms. Gonzalez will tell you more about later, identified that there was a real need for more parent groups and for a chance for parents to talk with other professionals. So she'll tell you a little bit more about that soon, but we're really trying to respond to what we're hearing. Once again, family support for social emotional wellness also includes the resources on the website. It also includes a lot of information that our incredible communications department sends out through social media, reminders about resources. This year, we started sending the monthly newsletters that I told you that we did for staff. We started writing parallel ones for families. So in September, when we sent out a staff email about suicide prevention, we also sent out a family email about suicide prevention with information about the training we were doing for our own staff and supports and resources for them should they need them. And then this last month, we had an email about that went to staff about anxiety and how to support their own anxiety and any anxiety or fear or nervousness that they might see in their students. And then we sent out a parallel email to families with tips for supporting themselves and their students during times that might be more anxiety provoking. Okay. Also, principals do regularly send out communications, also reminding about various kinds of resources, and also making sure that families know that we have support staff available to help their children, that even though students are not coming in person to our campus, a lot of them yet, and certainly not any of them earlier in this semester, they still have full access to the full-time complement of support staff that we've always had, and we're trying to remember to remind families of that as well as students. Speaking of students, what do we do for students? Well, of course, everything I've talked about already targets students, whether we're supporting staff to support themselves, supporting staff to support students, supporting families to support their students. But I wanted to sort of offer this list as well. So we've really focused a lot at the beginning of the year, and really there's an underlying theme that I know you've heard from Dr. Mendeville regularly about the importance of relationships, that no good learning can happen in the absence of good relationships. And we really try to target at the beginning of the year for students how to build relationships even during times of virtual learning. So we've offered some tips and focus on that for staff that will benefit students. We've continued to push out information about the support and availability of counselors, youth specialists, and so on. We still have mindfulness rooms and activities. Some teachers are using these strategies online, and we look forward to the day when we can open up mindfulness rooms again safely. They're partially open now, but of course there'll be There'll be different kinds of restrictions while we still need to physically distance. There are resources that are available through the website and pushed through social media because teenagers aren't as likely to go to a website as they are to get their info from social media. So we try to be hip that way. There's the availability of clubs and sports, even during remote learning, because, again, as Dr. Mendeville has mentioned, and I agree with, we need to practice physical distancing, but we don't need to practice social distancing. We still have to have connections with peers, with family, with friends, with coworkers. And so we're still making these kinds of activities available, even if they have to be modified to be safe. And of course, we still have our collaboration with Teen Lifeline. And that involves having, their information on student IDs. It involves the hotline support, and we continue to collaborate with them. So we're grateful for that. Let's see, I don't want to miss anything here. I want to make it clear, too, that how do students get referred for help? They can refer themselves, their families can refer them, or staff can refer them, because that was a question that had come up. And that's really important because we have some students that are much quieter and might not be as likely to seek out supports for themselves. So part of the training we've done with staff is really to help them think about which students have they not gotten to know yet, and maybe could they pick 5 students a week that they really don't know anything about and try to reach out and connect with them and make sure they're okay. Because we know it's not realistic to reach out individually to 140 students, but it's okay to be thinking about who's not advocating for themselves and who might I need to reach out to. Okay, almost done with my slides here. Partnering with the community for social emotional wellness. We know our partnerships, we couldn't do it without them. We're a team, just like we are as a staff here. We're a team with our community members. You've already, we're going to be hearing a lot more in a minute about our Care 7 youth specialists through the city of Tempe. We also want you to know that Care 7 provides us a trauma-informed trainer. This used to be Lori Robinson, who was incredible, and she's moved on to another great job. And now we have equally incredible Robin Afinowicz, who you'll probably be hearing more from in the future. She's an expert on trauma-informed care. She's an expert on mindfulness. She's a teacher. She's a yoga instructor. She's an all-around amazing person. Whenever I've talked to anybody about her, they just light up. So we're really thrilled that she's going to be able to provide us training, provide us consultation, and we'll be able to work with her as well. So thank you, City of Tempe Care 7. Also, thank you to the cities of Tempe and Phoenix for our long and important history of school resource officers who support many things, including connectedness and a feeling of safety on campus. Tempe Community Council, who you've already heard, helps with triple P parenting. The Tempe Coalition and the Pathway Program, we were able to utilize a lot through the High School Health and Wellness Grant over the last 3 years, and they've helped to focus on substance abuse prevention and intervention. So we're really grateful for all those resources. ASU, of course, is right here. Why not partner with them? They're amazing. And one of the latest things that they've done for us is brought support for peer-to-peer support groups on different campuses. They had a program called Devil to Devil that worked really well at ASU, which sounds auspicious, but it really means peer support. And because we know that teens will turn to teens often before they will turn to other adults. So what it does is it helps, they can join clubs and collaborate with club leaders to support student training on how they can provide leadership and support for each other. So this has been terrific at the campuses that have been able to embrace this. We also have a relationship in the past, and will continue to through this grant, with Not My Kid, which is a great organization you've probably heard of. They have been delivering the Bot-Vin life skills classes that previously we were only able to offer to freshmen, but because of this new grant, we should be able to now offer it to all different grade levels. We continue, as you know, to partner with Teen Lifeline, and we're grateful for their consultation. And finally, Living Works, which will be a new partner as we train people in Safe Talk and Assist, again, through the grant. So I now want to introduce Maria Gonzalez, who is a licensed master social worker and also the Care 7 Social Services Coordinator, because we really want to highlight our partnership, the history and the expansion of our youth specialists. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marin. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Maria Gonzalez, and I am the Social Services Coordinator for Care 7. And as Dr. Marin mentioned earlier, I supervise the Youth Specialist Program that is in all of your schools, which I'm so excited to be here and talk about today. So just to start off, maybe I can be as graceful as Dr. Marin was. Just to start off, a little bit of the history of Care 7, the Care 7 Youth Specialist Program. So the program's been embedded in the Tempe-Union High School District for about 25 years. The funding has ranged throughout those years. So for 16 of the 25 years, we had the tobacco, alcohol, and other drug grant that provided prevention funding to support these services. When the grant was eliminated in 2010, the Tempe Community Council stepped in to provide funding through the Community and Schools program. And then in about 2016, 2017, these services were offered 12 hours a week at each school. And then it actually led to 2018, 2019, where some incidents happened and services were increased for about 24 hours a week. And that's really when the district jumped in and said this is a really important service and started funding the program. This last year, it was funded for 35 hours a week for 32 weeks of the year. And again, that was to the district, which was fantastic. Finally, this last year, we did a lot of work, and the city and the school district saw the importance of these types of mental health supports and how important they were to our students. And so it was because of this wonderful partnership that we were now able to expand the youth specialist role to be 40 hours a week, so it's available to all students during the school day and year-round. So even during summer breaks, or other school breaks, we'll be able to offer some other services that we can talk about later today. So the program's really expanded in the last 4 years, and it's just been amazing, and it's all because of the City of Tempe and the school district's partnership. So this is just some of the snapshots of some of the services that we provide. While the Youth Specialist Program is not a clinical program, I want to go over that now. Our Care 7 staff are all master's level professionals who are trained in crisis response, resource navigation, and tools to help with social and emotional needs. The goal of the program is to be able to provide the stability of an adult who listens to them without judgment, validates their experiences, concerns, and strengths. Youth specialists are trained to integrate with other school staff and support programs by providing intervention services on each campus. We reduce the need for other crisis response teams to come out when a student is in crisis. Youth specialists can divert any situation and provide solutions to staff and parents when a student is in crisis. We feel that our role is expansive. We try to provide a culture of wellness by engaging students when they're not in crisis, to provide personalized supports and support groups using our One Circle Foundation evidence-based curriculum. We see students worrying about all kinds of things, whether it's basic needs, where they will sleep tonight, if they will eat dinner, if they're safe at home, grades, unhealthy relationships, grieving the loss of a loved one, or even wanting them to harm themselves or others. So there's a lot of needs in our school district, and our youth specialists have been just wonderful in being able to provide resources and assistance to students. One of the other aspects that comes with this wonderful partnership of Care 7, the City of Tempe, and the school district is that because our Care 7 staff are on campus, they can automatically connect to other resources within the Care 7 program, such as counseling, veteran services, crisis response, victim services, and how Dr. Marin mentioned earlier, our trauma-informed trainer, along with other programs that are in our human services department. And Care 7 staff can continue connecting families outside of City of Tempe services as well as needed. There we go. So we wanted to show a small snapshot of the number of students that have been served in the last few fall semesters as we've seen the numbers or the hours increase in each one of these youth specialist positions. So in 2018, it was when they had expanded, I believe, to 24 hours 24 to 35 it was kind of like a middle ground there. We had seen a total of 702 students in the fall. Last year, when they were 35 hours a week, they had seen 903 students. And finally, currently, as of last week, we have been able to serve 334 students. And as we go on, I hope to give you an updated number throughout the end of the semester and the school year. So, and these are all students that have either been referred by staff, school resource officers, guidance counselors, teachers, self-referral, or other students have referred. Other students have been able to say, you know what, this person helped me, you should contact them and they can help you too. So it's again been wonderful. Youth specialists can see students either daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it is that that student needs at that point in time. It's they can have scheduled check-ins if that's what the student needs. If the student does not need a scheduled visit but finds themselves in a crisis situation, they can always drop in and get that assistance as well. That is the beauty of having that mental health support on campus and readily available. We're able to, if it is an immediate need or if it's something that's scheduled, we're able to assist with any crisis, help develop coping skills, and refer to higher levels of assistance as needed. If we need to refer over to a counseling, we're able to refer within our own counseling department or refer over to some of the other supports like Dr. Marin mentioned earlier, COVID care, which is also through our Care 7 team. There are some students that only visit once. And that's okay too. They don't have to visit all the time. If they want to visit more than once, that's okay. If we were able to talk about it and you're good to go, that's okay too. And so students, at least even if it's only one time, they know that that support is there moving forward. And that's also been wonderful. If students decide that the individual sessions don't work for them, the support groups are always an option. So what we do with our One Circle curriculum is we have been able to facilitate non-therapeutic support groups where students have a safe space to share their thoughts and feelings. The curriculum allows for consistency across the board throughout the district, which has also been nice, but it also allows for the stability, for us to be able to facilitate support groups for all genders as well, so it's not a closed-off group for really anybody. And you can talk about really anything. The curriculum has been wonderful in tackling all kinds of situations. Students are able to self-identify where they would like to go and can let us know where they feel most comfortable. So as Dr. Marin mentioned earlier, there's some things that are in the works. And again, I can't stress this enough. There's no way that we would be able to even talk about this if it wasn't for the partnership that we have with the school district. So I am so appreciative of that. It's really made a difference in students' lives. But because of this, we're trying to figure out how to best meet these diverse needs right now. And one of the things that we're trying to plan are home visits. We're trying to see what the safest way possible for our youth specialists to be able to go out and just check in, see how the students are doing, see if the family needs anything. Because Care 7 is connected to so many services, if the student or family is in need of something like food or rental assistance or utility assistance, and we don't know until we get to that home, that's what we're hoping to be able to help with. And then to just, again, be able to show the students that we care, we're here to support all the way through no matter what you need, whether it's virtual or in person. So home visits is in the works, more to come. If I can come again and let you know how that's all going, I will. The next piece that we're working on is support groups for parents and guardians. So we found that quite a few parents were also referring their students over for support services with the youth specialist, which is great. And as we were doing that, we quickly found out that our parents are extremely stressed out right now, rightfully so. And so we wanted to try to put something in place where we would be able to support our parents and guardians too, so they can better support their students. So our goal is to be able to facilitate parent support groups at each one of the school campuses and talk about current stressors and making sure that we facilitate in a way that makes it a safe place for parents to come in and really talk about what it means to be a parent right now. And how we can help with some basic coping skills. And again, if they need a connection to services such as counseling, we're able to do that within that support group. And that's it for me. Any questions or concerns, comments?
Well, I would like to first start off by saying thank you, both to you also on your presentations. We're going to open it up for questions. To make it more equal, we're going to go one question each around.
Yes.
If we have a follow-up, you can do a follow-up if it's directly with that question you're doing, but otherwise, we're going to keep it going. All right, so we'll start off with Mrs. Lau, and then we'll keep going around till we get to Board Member Barraza.
Thank you, Maria and Dr. Marin, for everything you're doing. As a board member, I'm very proud of our district because I think we're ahead of many districts in the state of Arizona. I wonder sometimes if we've ever dented the student need. Is there so much that we haven't done? So I have two questions and I'll ask one. That 334 for this fall seems low because we hear many times about the kids at home. So are you concerned about that? And what are we doing to identify more kids that we keep hearing everybody at home is dealing with isolation and depression?
Absolutely. So at first I saw that number, and you're right, I do think that's a little low, and I think part of that is, at least in talking to the youth specialists who are doing all the amazing work, is that it's been very tough already transitioning into the virtual realm for their direct instruction, that sometimes some students have given some feedback about having to log in to see yet another person on the screen. So I will say that has been something that's been identified. My hope is that now that we're back in person, is that some of those students start coming back and engaging in person, and so we're able to better serve that way if the in-person contact is what's preferable for students. But we're still trying to do both. Actually, we're reaching out to students. We're meeting students through Google Meets. We're giving them the ability to send emails if that's easier, if they want to send emails and correspond that way. We're giving them the ability to text. We're meeting them in person. And then like I said, we're hoping to do home visits. So we're hoping that that's another way yet to engage more students and let them know that we're here. But I do think that the change has been difficult.
Thank you.
Of course.
I want to just comment just real briefly. For fall, though, at what date did you stop? Because I don't know if that's truly representative of fall is a number of months. So is fall 2018 and 19, when we start school in August through December?
Correct.
So we're missing a few months.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I imagine that 334 is going to go up quite a bit.
I would think so, yes. Of course.
And then we started later too, so
Yes.
we have to add that all in there too.
And like I said, I'll be more than happy to come back with a fall report if you're all curious.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Maria and Dr. Marion, for your presentation. And I was also excited to hear that you're an MSW. So
Yes.
I am not, but I've worked with many folks who are, and I really appreciate all the work that they do. I have a lot of questions. I will do my one and then circle back. A lot of notes. But one thing I wanted to start off with is, obviously we've talked about that relationships are key to connecting to student success and the mental wellness. That has been true for me as well, especially when I was a student, and for my brother. And I wanted to ask you, because I know it was mentioned that we had started kind of preliminary student input at Desert Vista and McClintock. And that obviously that was disrupted due to COVID. But I wanted to ask, what did that preliminary, what were the preliminary findings for that? And also, I guess, the expansion of it to all of the schools to help identify the unique challenges that, each school community might face.
Of course, and I feel like Dr. Marion would be best fit to answer that question, so I'm
I
going to
have
go ahead and
another one
switch
for
out
you
really
later,
fast.
but yes.
Oh, no, I'm not going anywhere. You're good.
Hi, Mr. Garcia, members of the board. So yes, we did get started with focus on social emotional learning at 2 of our campuses. Again, I want to emphasize that that doesn't mean that those were the only campuses who were and are doing important things in the area of social emotional learning. But what we're doing and the way we structured that is we were following the organization called CASEL, C-A-S-E-L, which stands for the Collaborative of Academic and Social Emotional Learning. They have an incredible website, which I would encourage you all to look at. It has resources for exactly what we're doing, for helping school teams really look and identify what they're doing well and what they need to do more of. And we were beginning to educate ourselves together about how to do a self-assessment and what the next steps were. So what we did, as I said, is we really very thoughtfully got together and talked about, and I taught them as much as I can teach them, becoming an expert in social emotional learning myself along the way, what exactly we meant by social emotional learning, had them kind of come up with their own working definition after looking at others, and they really integrated a lot about diversity and equity into that definition as well. And interestingly, just in the last week, CASEL has unveiled an updated definition which includes that also. We did that. We reviewed the data because we really wanted to not only guess what the needs were, but really see what people were saying. And at the time we reviewed the data last fall, the data was very recent because we had just gathered some the very same semester and the spring before. And the next steps were going to be, before this all changed, was bringing together a group of school-based stakeholders to expand that effort. What we really want to do with this kind of program is make sure that it's really driven by the team that it's serving. So we don't want the district office to say, this is what you need to do at your school. We know that the healthiest way to do this is to have the school say, this is what's working at our school and this is what we need more of, and to design their own training and enrichment that way. So the next step will be to bring staff members on to go through some of that same process and self-analysis, and then ultimately to also include, before moving too much further, community members, parents, and students to be on that team as well, and really look at understanding there's 5 different elements of social emotional learning, understanding what those all are. They have to do with self-awareness, other awareness, relationship building, and a couple of other things to really understand all those domains and really understand what evidence-based interventions that they could enrich at their campuses to expand at. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, so it's my question next. I think this is a question maybe for both of you guys. When it comes down to discipline, and I will put this in a social emotional way, discipline sometimes come in emotional, because anger is usually the second emotion. Do we have anything in order? Did you see a child that keeps getting in the same trouble? Are they getting linked or dinged, getting aspect to have a counselor come in and talk to them? Because a lot of the time they can be, you get the discipline part, but are we getting the emotional part of it at the same time? So I want to answer that. I want that question. That's my question. How are we connecting that?
Thank you, Madam President. And as you know, none of these things are in isolation. They all overlap, and it's important to think about them all together. So we are really looking forward to expanding and working in the area of restorative practices so that we are really thinking about why student behavior is the way it is and making everything we used to think of as sort of a misbehavior or a naughty opportunity be another learning opportunity, figuring out how to teach alternatives to an antisocial behavior, potentially, or a negative behavior, and really understand where that's coming from. We also need to understand to what extent our environment is not understanding the students, and are we triggering things? So I think it's, yes, a student could be referred to a counselor, and Mr. Lauer would also like to
I'm going to
add.
bring up, because I'm going to add on, since he's come in, I'm going to tack on something else to my question. I want to know directly, when we discipline our students, are we putting in there exactly what? Because I have known kids to get disciplined, but they're not getting the second, I asked the question, did you get anybody to talk to you on another level? And it's a no. So I want to know, what are we doing to put in place? Do we make sure these kids are getting that second emotional hit?
Yes, that is one of the things we started working on along with the grant, is advocating and supporting a lot of the students. When they're not presenting the best version of themselves, something's going on, and they didn't come to school with that intent. So we did start trying to help and support and have them pushed over to us to kind of see and reach out a little bit more to see what's going on. So that has started taking place along with the grant the last few years. We do have a long way to go and need to get better. And that student will continue to precipitate those same behaviors until we get to the core of really what's going on.
As a board, we would love to have follow-up on that to see where that's actually going, because that's something. We're going to go over to Michelle. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you, Dr. Marin. I'm on page 4 about the resources, and I noticed that you have purchasing and warehouse down. And it got me thinking about how can we, as a board, support you in any purchases or any items that you might need in the up and coming year as we look at our budget.
Well, thank you, Ms. Helm, for asking that question. I think, while I don't have that graphic in front of me, that while we always need funding to do good things, those things go hand in hand, that purchasing and warehouse wasn't, part of the social emotional webpage. But your point is well taken that, yes, I mean, we're really grateful that we have the grant that we do. We're waiting to hear about another grant, and we're considering applying for a third. These are all going to be incredibly helpful resources to support some of these measures. The grant we're waiting to hear about would be able to support a lot in the area of mindfulness and restorative practices. And I was very remiss in not mentioning that Mr. Lauer, in addition to running mindfulness at Mountain Point, is also overseeing our whole mindfulness project this year. So we're really grateful for his expertise and support in that area. We would love to have permission to come back to you and let you know if we have additional financial needs in any of these areas, and we're working hard to get supplemental support to do those. And of course, our community partners are helping to supplement that as well.
Thank you. We feel very fortunate to have a wonderful grant writer in Diane Welling. But as we look at our future budget, it is nice to know if there are needs that you might have that we may accommodate by including in a future budget. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I will also add, of course, that we know that we need as many kinds of counseling supports as we can in the school. And we continue to look at how to do that because the budget makes that very hard. But we continue to look at roles and responsibilities of our current employees and expanding to include additional support staff. So I know that's always a big need, and we'd love to continue to discuss that with you.
Thank you. Board Member Barraza.
First off, thank you for the presentation, both of you. It was very thoughtful, very mindful of really what we're trying to achieve as a district, and I'm very proud of all the work that has gone into social and emotional wellness. For me, I was, a teen parent, and I got in trouble a lot. Our disciplinary system then was very much, it hits you, and then it gets worse. And until the point to where I was suspended for a semester, here, a semester there. I honestly think I was suspended more in 1 year than I was attending. And it got to a point to where it really meant nothing to me anymore. School meant nothing to me. Suspensions are really, to me, something that should be last resort. I know we still do them for a lot of things that personally I think we shouldn't be suspending and taking away school time to children. There are things that we should also not only maybe look at suspension, but also couple it with things. I just want to know kind of where are we at with our disciplinary system today from where I was at as a kid.
Board Member Baraza, that's just when we go into that subject about discipline, we have to email Dr. Mendeville because that's not actually part of the study session if it doesn't hit social emotional part of it.
Then I'll rephrase my question.
Okay.
How are suspensions impacting social emotional wellness of students when they come back after long-term suspensions?
I'd be happy, Mr. Baraza, to answer that question and to see if any of the other executive team members or my other colleagues would like to add anything else to that. We understand that relationships are incredibly important, and we need to respond to certain behaviors in an educational way, set limits and boundaries. That's an important part of teaching behavior, but it's not okay to have students feel like they don't belong. And so just like we were talking about postvention and suicide prevention as being part of that, a suspension ideally would always be followed by a very focused effort to reintegrate and welcome the student back to the community. Because the way you describe your experience, you were feeling very distanced from the community and like maybe not invested because those relationships were broken. Part of restorative practices is helping students understand and take responsibility for their behavior, but it's also educating staff to understand that that behavior is a behavior, it's not the whole person, and to help that person continue to feel valued and a part of the community. So I think that that is relevant to the work that we have done and the work that we look forward to continue doing.
And I want to respond to that too, because that's a very, very good question. We just had a meeting or just a visit with Dr. Wilson and Mr. McDonald. I think it was just yesterday, and we were talking about a program that we are that's pretty comprehensive on exactly what you're talking about. It holds the student responsible to learn a few. It's not a canned product, but it's a real a resource that our students can use on campus. So to your point of being suspended for 5 days is a joy for some kids, and they just got exactly what they want. That's not what we're trying to do. So coupled with the restorative practice mindset and some of those pieces, along with this program that we are confirming now, we want to have that system in place so we can address exactly what you're saying, the needs of the kids at school and keep them at school so they can continue to learn. We also have, our technology and mechanisms in place where they can not lose trajectory for their curriculum. They're up to date with school and their assignments and all that while they're learning, okay, I need to do this better. And I love what you said, Dr. Marin. It's the behavior, it's not the entire kid. We all have behaviors that we need to improve upon, and that doesn't define you as a kid. And so, great question. So I think collectively, we have some real positive solutions that we hope to present in the spring.
And I'm sorry, just to add to that, what I do know that's going on school campus right now, and I actually want to give kudos to the staff and administration and the youth specialists for all of this, it's that the youth specialist role is never going to be a disciplinary role, period. That's not our role. We're there for social and emotional support only. And so what I do know is going on each campus is that administration, teachers, staff are very much aware of what students are having a difficult time, and they are the referral sources to the youth specialist. So whether the student's been suspended or they're acting in a way that we haven't seen before, they're struggling, they still always have the youth specialist, whether they're coming back from suspension or they are having certain behaviors that we've never seen before. So I want to let you know that social emotional support for students is always there no matter what the situation is.
I really appreciate that.
Along with that, what we started doing with the Health and Wellness Grant last year is following up with students that did come back off of suspension, letting them know, hey, you are so much better than your last mistake, to reintegrate them back into the school. And is there anything we can do to help support, to not let them feel like they're alienated from that mistake? There is a consequence a lot of times for infractions, but we need to move on. And you are coming back home, right? You are coming back to that school that you are associated with, and we want to welcome that back. So we have been trying to get better at how we are initiating that relationship upon the return.
I really appreciate that for all the work the district's doing. As a teen parent, again, that just kept, it was stressful. You're always stigmatized going to classes, and it was just a whole ball of just chaos in my life. And it really didn't feel like home for a long time until we did have a program that did reach out to teen parents. And that's really, I think, what kind of like started to shift things. So thank you, guys. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Board Member Bronzer. Mrs. Lau?
I'm ready. Hey, first of all, thank you for answering some of my questions I sent in already. I appreciate that. And thank you very much for beginning a parent support group at each of the schools. I think that's going to be very much appreciated. And this isn't my question, but maybe you can work in when that might begin at some point toward the end of this. So here's my question. I had wondered if there was any kind of documentation or follow-up when, let's say, a parent calls a principal and says, I'm seeing serious signs of whatever, depression or anxiety in my student. And what I was a little worried about what was happening is they would refer them to our website and say there are many resources, see what you can find. But it sounds